Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Spirit Matters, your daily Bhakti Center podcast, where we are discussing the Bhagavad Gita, this ancient yogic spiritual text, and learning how to apply its wisdom to our everyday lives. We are here with our live studio audience from all over the states, all over the world, and with my co-host, Achyuta Gopi. How are you doing this morning, Achyuta?
Feeling sheltered.
Feeling sheltered. I'm feeling transcendentally transcendentally raspy. That's how I'm feeling. Yesterday's kirtan was like I was just like screaming at the top of my lungs, and I was just like, whatever, this is epic. I love it.
When you
So
started with transcendentally, I was like, wait, where are we going? I thought
really
something was going
raspy.
to happen.
So we left off somewhere yesterday. Martha made a beautiful comment about Krishna like a father
Yes.
to all of his sons, and you have a story about.
Yeah. So when Martha was saying we're all God's children, and as a parent, um, God will love us and accept us and just be there for us. And there's a story in the Bible, and I think his name was Luke, and he has a rich parent. And so he asks his parent for his inheritance kind of early. And so then he goes and he gets the inheritance and he kind of squanders it, spends it all up. And then next thing you know, there's a famine and a drought and all kinds of things. And this person goes through really hard times. They wind up working at a pig farm and all kinds of stuff. And they had been like royalty before. And so then they decide, like, after everything is said and done, they're thinking, okay, well, I have no options now but to go back to my father, penniless and kind of downtrodden. And they kind of make the speech in their minds beforehand. I'll repent, tell my dad, like, sorry, I've sinned, I've done all these things. It's been a horrible time. Can't believe I've done all this, and I've been away from you. All these things. And it said that when this son gets even in the vicinity of home, the father sees him and he takes off running toward him. And he thinks, oh no, he's going to be even more mad than I thought. This is a bad idea. And when the father gets there, he just hugs him, tears in his eyes. And the son begins to explain all that's happened in the past years. And the father just doesn't care. The father is so deeply into rejoicing about, prodigal son returning. And he has a whole big festival, all kinds of things. And the connection is kind of made that that's how God is. We have our whole spiel set up in our minds about all the ways that we haven't surrendered, all of the sins that we might have done, all of the deeds that we are now repenting about. And Krishna simply doesn't remember. That's not what's important to Krishna. In fact, the minute we turn our faces back to Krishna, we've been gone for lifetimes. And we were talking about the fact that we want a place where we can play, dress up, and be master. And so this material world is that place. And we've been here for lifetimes. And Krishna remembers every single one of them. And yet he's not bringing them up. Even to Arjuna, he's like, many, many births, both you and I have taken. I can remember all of them. You can't. And now we get up and we fight through this one. He's not sitting there like, but do you remember? I don't know if you remember. But once upon a time, you were the most horrible person that there's ever been, and all this stuff. It simply is not the most important thing to Krishna. And that story and the analogy of a parent always makes me think, if one living entity, a limited spirit soul, could be that forgiving, could be that accepting, even if your parents are angry with you and they might tell you to stand in the corner, they never do so for forever. So what makes us think that God, the supreme person, the source from which all of our identities and all of our characteristic traits come from, would be so hard-hearted that they're now going to condemn us for forever? Not only are they going to condemn us for forever, but if we make one mistake, we have got to apologize for the rest of our existence. Krishna is just, he's not focused on that. And at a certain point, it is good for us to acknowledge the things that we've done, because that helps us keep a gauge on not doing those things again. But Krishna's like, but I'm hoping you don't do those things again for you, not because I'm holding a grudge. And that's what I think is so wonderful, is that God doesn't hold a grudge. And I want to get out of that mindset of thinking that God is perpetually holding this grudge against me and that I have to apologize for the rest of my existence. Whereas God is like, do you even remember what happened? Like, I don't remember what happened. Like, it's just not necessary for God to remember. And that was really comforting. And so when Martha was saying that God is like our Father and will accept us, that's that verse 1144 yesterday that we went through at the Bhakti Center. Arjuna finally asks Krishna, he's like, bear with me. Just bear with me. Like a father with a son, or like a lover with the beloved. Just bear with me. And the grace and understanding that we afford those who are close to us and those that we love, God will give us that and more, because God is so much more unlimited. So that's my little Bible story.
I love that Bible story. I love it. I was talking to someone yesterday after the kirtan, and she was telling me about, I've met her many times before, but just like, I think yesterday was the first time we really like connected. And she was telling me about like kind of her journey. She was born kind of into the movement, into the Bhakti Yoga movement, Hare Krishna movement in India. And she's had her journey of like going here and going there and being away and from a distance and whatever.
Yeah, I spoke to her also.
And I think that it's really interesting for I think this applies to everyone, to be very honest, because I think everyone has been socialized in a way where there's some concept of God, of spirituality, of this or whatever. And especially in our modern times, we've been socialized in a way of like, unless you were brought up in like, you know, a very intense religion, and there's like a, you know, just kind of like a general, yeah, religion's there, but in general we're just like kind of secular. But yeah, maybe we'll go, not go, like this, whatever. It's kind of just like not the most important thing. And I think that because there's been so much unfortunate kind of blasting of the aspects of religion, or the aspects of people in those religions that have made things negative, it's made us be apart from it, you know, or it's made us equate institution to God, institution to Krishna, this priest or pastor or whatever to God. And so a lot of people have issue with religion, basically, is what I'm trying to say. And I was telling her, I was like, yeah, I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness since I was like a baby. And so it was really intense. And like, I don't think people get, like when I tell them, like some people get it because like they get it. And some people don't get it. They're, oh yeah. I'm like, no. I was like an 8-year-old child in a mini suit, standing on podiums with the Bible in Spanish, like giving speeches about like Jesus and God, you know, and I had to like go knocking on people's doors and be like, hola, buenos dias, like here's the Bible, you know, like that's what I had to do.
That's exactly how it sounded.
That's how it does. That's exactly how it sounded. And it's interesting because from my personal experience, and her and I were talking, it's like the moment we start to think, and I'm bringing up in relation to your point of truth, the moment we start to think like, you know what, I'm having weird feelings about God, or I'm having weird feelings about religion, it starts to spiral a little bit, because it starts to be like, then I must be awful, or I must be this, or maybe, you know, especially if you were raised in something like this, it's like, I must be a non-believer, or like whatever, this and this. And even us practicing bhakti, a day that we might forget Krishna, you know, maybe we forgot to do our little things. It's like, oh no, I'm the worst, I'm this, I'm whatever. And I really appreciated your comment, Achyuta, about like, God's not holding a grudge. Krishna's not holding a grudge. Because even if you go to the most, you know, I've had loads of conversations with loads of different people that come into the Bhakti Center. It's like everyone's searching for meaning and purpose. and everyone is searching for something deeper than just like finding pleasures in kind of instantaneous, temporary material things. Like they've done all that stuff and they want something more. But the thing is, this is what I'm getting at. It's like people feel, I'm speaking in general, people feel that like, I'm not worth it. Like God's not going to want me because I'm just like a mess, I've just done all this crazy stuff. I've been all over the place, da 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 da, et cetera, et cetera. I look at like the people who are, leading the kirtans and being the spiritualists, and I'm like, I'm not that. Why is Krishna going to want me? And then when I start to go into that place, specifically with this girl, I was talking about like cynicism and nihilism. It's like, you know what? Nothing makes sense. Nothing makes sense. The world doesn't make sense. Everything is meaningless. We're worm food, And it's like, if you think about it, a lot of people think that way. Like a
Yeah.
lot of people think that way. We're worm food.
A lot of
Nothing's sustainable.
spiritualists think that way.
YOLO, like this. A lot of people think this way, but I just want to reference this verse that we read yesterday, but I'll just kick it off here. 46 of that. When you understand the purpose behind the Vedas, behind these spiritual teachings, that it says all purposes served by a small well can at once be served by a great reservoir of water. Similarly, all the purposes of the Vedas can be served to one who knows the purpose behind him. And so I think that like when we're caught up in thinking that God is holding a grudge against us, or that we don't fit into like a spiritual community, or we're not spiritualists, I'm not religious, I'm not this, I'm not that. It's like when that happens, you will inevitably seek shelter in all of the wrong things, all of the things that are not going to water that root, as Srila Prabhupada was saying in a purport somewhere, I can't remember.
Yeah. Because
And yeah, no, I was just going to end with saying that like, and Krishna is just telling us that like, hey, like turn to me and we can water that root together. It's that simple.
And what's amazing is we are sitting here thinking, like you said, we do get to a place where we're like, God's not going to want me. I'm a hot mess. I've been through so much. Why would the Supreme Person even want me? And I love that Srila Prabhupada is constantly making this point that Krishna consciousness is not an artificial imposition on the mind. This is not new. We are simply reestablishing what you've already had. It's like, why would God want me? It's like, God always wanted you. There was never actually a time. This was your natural state of being. Now we've convinced ourselves that something else was the beginning. It's like the beginning was you were already there. It's not like, oh, God doesn't want me. God's been the whole time just been like, well, I was just waiting for you to come back. It's like if you and I are great friends and then something weird goes down at the Bhakti Center and I'm like, sure, I can't be friends with you anymore because weird things have gone down at the Bhakti Center. And you're like, but I'm not the entirety of the Bhakti Center. Like, I'm like, no, sorry. We can never speak again. That would be really sad. But that's how we treat God. It's like something's gone down at this institution, and so we can never speak again. And so I'm always encouraging people. I'm like, okay, I hear it. If you're fed up with the institution, be fed up with the institution, no problem. But you don't need the institution to establish a relationship with the Supreme Person. And I'm always like, whatever you do, just don't give up on the Supreme Person. Even if you decide to never go to another temple or church or mosque or synagogue ever again, keep that relationship with the Supreme Person because that temple is here. It doesn't need walls and all these things. It's like, just call your friend.
And I feel like that's why spaces like this are so important,
Yeah.
because, people go through stuff, and there are days where I'm just like, I do not want to be around 100 people right now, in a kirtan. I want to be like horizontal on my couch with like a chai, drinking,
Right.
like that's what I want to do. And so, and for whatever reason, someone's going through something. Maybe they're having issues with the institution, maybe they're having social issues, whatever it is, they don't want to go into the physical space of the institution, the building, the temple, whatever. But Sangha is so important, and hearing is so important. because a lot of times when people are going through stuff with the institution, I always ask them, I'm like, okay, like, are you reading? Are you hearing? Are you hearing what Krishna has to say? You know, that's more important than like whatever drama is going on over here, you know? And so I really appreciate these types of spaces where we get to come together virtually all over the world and just, you know, no institutions. We're just talking about Bhagavad Gita. That's all we're doing, you know? But I think that the problem becomes, and I'm gonna segue us into the verse, even if we cover it again on Monday, because it's such an important
Yeah,
one.
this verse is one that needs to like.
It needs, yeah, we'll cover it again on Monday, but I want to leave some food for thought for the weekend. I think a big problem becomes is that we want to be in control. We want to be in control. We want to do A and get result B. We want to be like, but I did the things. Why aren't things going the way exactly how I want it and need it to be? And so
I agree. It does come from this root of needing to be in control, and you have to surround yourself with the right people. Because even if you say, well, I'm not going to go to the institution, but I am going to find a sangha, I am going to find a community. Sometimes, if the people are not secure in their relationship with the Supreme Person, they will try to ruin your relationship with the Supreme Person, because we've all got to do it the same way. Because I'm doing the things to get the results. And that's the fruitive activity part. And if you are not doing the things exactly this way to get the result, then how could you possibly get the result that I am wanting? So you've got to do it this way, this way, this way, and that's it. There are no other ways. And I think my mom used to challenge Jehovah's Witnesses because they would come to the door, and not challenge them in the way you would think, but they would come to the door, and she would always open the door and engage in long conversations. And I'm like, Mom, like Mahaprabhu used to have like spiritual religious debates on logic and grammar and reasoning, and I'm like, but we don't need to do this now. Why? And so she'd talk to them for a long time, because my mom used to be a Christian, and she spent her whole life really carving out her spirituality, even from when she was little. She would go and find ways to make it to a church if parents weren't going, whatever. And so she would speak to them for a long time, and just about aspects of God as a person. And it would they were not coming from the same platforms. And then finally, she would say, well, I think we can agree to disagree. But if you really think that I need to adopt your way of thinking, then I just ask that you pray for me. And the most amazing thing was that many, many, many of those Jehovah's Witnesses would say, absolutely not. I'd
nope,
never pray for you. You're going to hell. And I'm like,
that's right.
like,
That's right.
wait a second, but if the person is going out, don't you think they need your prayers? Like, how does that take away from you if you just pray for isn't that what you're supposed to be doing in the first place? Like, how is it? How do we get to a place spiritually where you're trying to knock on somebody's door, like, please take the word of God, please take it. And they're like, well, I don't know if I could take it right now. Pray for me. Absolutely not. I'm like, well, then what were we supposed to be doing? But also, my thing about Jehovah's Witnesses is I wouldn't be recruiting new people. Aren't there only 144,000 spots?
There's only 144,000
Let me
spots.
tell you something. I would be protecting my spot with my very life. I'd be like, I'm not going out there recruiting anybody else. I'm not knocking on any doors. I'm not trying to tell anybody about this word of God. I'm just trying to keep the 144,000, 144K that we have right here, because it can't be possible that my Instagram could have possibly more space for more people than heaven does.
Oh, this is making me so
Instagram can't be
happy.
more unlimited than God. It just cannot.
Well, fun fact, since we're talking about Jehovah's Witness philosophy right now, 144,000 chosen go to heaven. Everyone else who's a Jehovah's Witness believer, they stay on paradise on earth, which occurs after Armageddon. So
Oh, thank
Armageddon,
you. Because I was like,
after Armageddon, paradise on earth happens and the believers stay there. The non-believers, it depends. If you never heard the Jehovah's Witness lore, then you'll be faced for judgment in front of God, and he will say, okay, do you believe in Jehovah or not, whatever. And if they say no, then they don't believe in hell, which is kind of nice. They believe in a place called Gehenna, which sounds really scary. And it is non-existence. It's not like fire and brimstone, but it's also kind of sadder because at least if you're in hell, you're still like you in fire and brimstone. But they believe in non-existence. Like you just,
That's like Brahma Jyoti. That's like
yeah.
Brahman
You're just like
effulgence right
over.
there.
You're just over.
Wow.
And then there's this whole other thing about like how 100 cajillion years, I don't know, Satan comes back to like test the people in paradise. Anyway, it's a whole thing. So
That's amazing.
it's a lot.
Fun fact, one time I asked, well, not me, I think Gora, he asked Radhanath Maharaj, he's like, where do the Christians go? And it was like Maharaj did not miss a beat. Radhanath Maharaj, he was just like, it was so smooth. He's like, they go to Satyaloka. And then everybody's like, wait, what? Give the purport. And so then he's like, no. Srila Prabhupada said they go to Satyaloka if you're a true believer. Like Satyaloka, and that's Lord Brahma's planet. Like that's a pretty high elevated place to be. Like you've got to go through like several levels of planetary systems in order to even reach Lord Brahma's planet. He's like, and then there are actual pure devotees on Satyaloka that can preach to you, and then they elevate you, and it's no problem. Like it was just like it's fine. And I loved it because I really like the Vedic paradigm of universal systems. I mean, there's such a all-encompassing, like there's room for everybody because everybody's already here. It's not like it's like, well, there's no room for you. Sorry, we don't know where to put you. We don't know what to do with you. And I like that there is a God with answers. And like I said, the institutions might get a little bit iffy sometimes, but we have to be able to separate the institution and people from the supreme person. And even with demigods, I think what is being reinforced by the Vedas is that sometimes there are celestials and they're just doing their jobs. It's like they're people and they're just doing their jobs. They're spirit souls, pretty much almost just like you, with the exception of like one or two, with like the exception of like Lord Shiva and Lord Vishnu. And they're like, even Lord Brahma, they're people doing their jobs. And what was really trippy for me was reading through different Vedic scriptures and having this idea of like, yeah, it's kind of like if you have a supervisor at work, it's like there's a person, they're doing their jobs. Sometimes there will be errors, sometimes there will be great, you can get promoted, all kinds of things. And then realizing that Brahma, Indra, those are the names of the posts. It's not the name of the person, because the person changes. That's the name of the post. So like Indra is not his name. His name, I think our current Indra's name is Purandar. And I was like, he's a guy? Like he's a person? Like, would you look at that? Like, and so it really drove home this point of there are going to be institutions and there are going to be people. But then there's our supreme person, and we have an eternal relationship with that supreme person. And we can't think that God isn't going to want us. God has always wanted us. That is a constant. That is a given. And there is no one who could be more accepting or forgiving than our supreme person. We can't think that there would be someone out there, a parent figure, whoever it is, that even if the world turned against us, there would be maybe one person who'd like, but I would still accept you no matter what you did. You could be the worst human on the face of the earth, and someone is there to accept this person. And I can't think that my supreme person could be so limited that some jiva who got all of their acceptance, all of their characteristics from the supreme person, would be more able to accept someone than my supreme person.
And I think that it's also an issue of like, we can't control other people, and we can't control institutions, and we can't control what they do or how they think or how they treat us or like whatever. And it's so interesting because sometimes when I speak to people about their issues with other people and with their like I was speaking to someone, and I was just like telling them, I was just like they weren't saying exactly what the problem was, but I got it. I'm very perceptive. And I told him, I was just like, you can't just like shake people into doing what you want. You know that, right? You can't just be like, do what I want, like it doesn't work that way. What you can do is choose how you think about it, choose how you feel about it, choose how you act, choose to act or not act, or you can choose your role in this situation. Like that you can, and I think a lot of times, we'll get there later in the Gita, people feel very, myself included, very at the behest of their mind. The mind takes over, the negative thoughts take over, the self-criticisms and judgments and guilt and envy and all the bad, that anger, it takes over, and it starts to feel like I don't have a choice. I'm just angry. I'm just angry at the institution because they did this to me, or I'm angry at this person because my friend who's not my friend anymore because they wronged me, or like whatever it is. And it's like, no, that's your mind. And like, maybe they did wrong you, maybe they didn't, like whatever, but you're the one who's choosing, am I going to have bitterness in my heart? Am I going to let this darkness consume me? Because it's not fun. I've been there, and I'm sure like many of us have been there with various different situations in our life where that darkness of the negativity of the mind starts to consume us. And the worst part is when we start to just think that, like, that's like, we start taking shelter of that, almost like, yeah, like everyone's out to get me and the world's evil and nothing makes sense and we're just worm food, so nothing matters. It's like, it's a very sad thing. I'll end with this. I was talking to the girl from yesterday about her journey in Krishna consciousness, etc. And at the end of our conversation, I was just telling her, I was just like, yeah, it's really hopeful. At the end of it all, it's really hopeful, this relationship that we have with Krishna. And for me, that's been the biggest takeaway, that I've found so much hope in just being with Krishna. And the other option is not not so much hope, kind of just like cynicism. And she's like, yeah, oh my God, you're right. She was like, I tried all that other stuff and it was just so dark and cynical and depressing. And she was like, and I thought I could handle it all and I thought I could whatever. She was like, but it just doesn't go anywhere, like taking shelter of material things. She's like, it just doesn't go anywhere. I was like, yeah, I know. And so I think Krishna is very hopeful. And yes, we're not worm food, not worm food, Pasha.
Oh no, not worm food. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think the last point that I'll make, which is funny that you were saying, you can't shake someone into doing what you want, which is like, so like you were basically what you're saying is that you have the right to perform your prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the fruits of action. Is that what you? Oh my gosh, because that sounds exactly like the point you were
We
making.
did it. We did it. We got there.
We did it. We did it. And we'll continue it on Monday. But on the subject of like praying for someone, I I don't often pray mischievously for other people, but my nature is very like, it is quite mischievous. Like I am the person where it's like, if there's a situation where you're not supposed to laugh, please don't look at me, because I'm usually like, there's something going on in my mind that is probably not appropriate for the situation at hand. I'm probably like, well, and so somebody wrote me this morning, just a random person that I don't know, and they were saying, they're like, I see that you believe in Krishna, but I can't in good conscience look at all of his activities and think that those are the characteristics and qualities of a god. Like, how could you? Like, he left the planet and never rose again. Only Jesus rose again. You should worship Jesus. And usually I just like block the people and move on. And today I looked at their name, and their name was Govind. And so I was like, that's funny. And so then I was like, well, I'm going to pray for you today. And so I actually responded. And so then I was like, I find it really ironic that you are named after the person that you are insulting. I was like, but it's okay. I was like, today I pray for you and bless you that you will never forget Krishna. I was like, no matter how much you run away from him, he's gonna keep following you around for life. And then like, I put my phone on do not disturb and closed the app and then cackled to myself like, it's gonna be great, because he's probably gonna be really mad about it. Like, that is not what this person thought they were gonna get when they like entered into this thing. And I really like doing things like that. They give me joy in my heart. So find your joy, friends, even if it's praying for someone. Just pray for them.
I love this story, Achita, because I love it so much because I'm also that way. I'm also just like, don't make eye contact with Jai Jagannath when an awkward situation is happening, because he and I have a psychic connection and we'll just burst out laughing about like
We'll
something
do it.
inappropriate, you know? But I really like this because it brings a little bit of levity to the whole situation, because I think that we should find levity in it. It's not all this like, oh my God, it's so serious and it's so heavy and it's so this. And I think a lot of times when you find people like this person on Instagram, I've met so many types of those people online or in person or whatever, or like ex-Jehovah's Witnesses that are just really serious about what I am doing is wrong. The
Yeah.
God that I'm worshiping is wrong and I'm going to hell. My lifestyle, wrong and I'm going to hell. My partner, wrong, going to hell, right? And it's just like, they're so intense and serious and angry and just like whatever. And it's like, you can choose to go down into that angry hole and get into senseless arguments and all of this stuff. Or you can choose to just be like, you know what? Not disturb.
Yeah. I'm like, it's
You know,
fine.
it's just like you're also able to do that and treat it with a little bit of levity, because at the end of the day, they're going through their journey and I'm not in charge of their journey, you know, like they might be taking out their weirdness or their anger on me or etc. And that's, you know, whatever, it is what it is. But at the end of the day, you have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you're not entitled to the fruits of your actions. So this this is by the way, everyone, this verse that we've kept on reading is the next verse in Bhagavad Gita that we were supposed to get to today.
We
But it
did
really
get to
was
we did
fine.
it.
We did.
We
We
did
just
it.
got to it right now. But we're gonna read it again on Monday because it's a really important verse. But yeah, it's like you can't control people, and even yourself. You can do your best, you can show up, you can try, you might make errors, it might not go the way that you planned. But I think the big takeaway for me, I'm giving my takeaway first, if that's okay today,
Yes.
is what Achyuta was saying. This whole thing, it's like, you know, Krishna's not like this vengeful, angry, holding stuff over your head kind of guy. It's like, oh, you didn't do the thing the way that I wanted to do, you're going to hell. Non-existence, you know? It's like, no, Krishna will always be there. He'll always love you, and he'll always have his arms open, waiting for you. We are fresh out of time. And we made it to the verse twice. We made it to that verse twice. So we're gonna hand it over to Kimberly for our takeaways, and if anyone else has any takeaways, please put them in the chat. Kimberly, what you got for us today?
Thank you. My takeaway is a lot like yours too. That Krishna doesn't hold a judge. Oh, doesn't hold a grudge. And no matter what we do, we're always welcome back home.
So beautiful. Thank you, Kimberly. Achyuta, what you walking away today with?
Yeah, that last takeaway was gorgeous because, welcome back home. And Srila Prabhupada, that was like the tagline, back home, back to Godhead, And yes, we are always welcome back home. And if there is one thing that I feel like I know, um, it it is that, like, you, Kishore, I don't think, and Radhanath Maharaj told me this once in my life, but I feel like I want to kind of like pay it forward. I feel like you have no fear. You should never have any fear of any negative reaction. Ever. I feel like you are such a bright light of spirituality in my life. And I'm really, really glad that over these months we've gotten time to like connect and get to know each other, because I really appreciate your view and your take on things spiritually. And I don't think that you should ever, ever again have any questions about like, what's happening with me. I feel like Krishna is so happy with you, especially since he's the one that said, in this endeavor, there is no loss or diminution. Little advancement. You've made so much more than just a little advancement, my friend. Okay. So my takeaway is that we can all be welcomed home, and that I'm happy that you're my friend.
Oh, thank you so much, Achyuta. I'm also happy that you're my friend. And yeah, it was so funny. I was talking to someone yesterday who was having some issues about some things
You always
socially.
talking to people with issues, man.
Yeah, I don't know. But I always knock some sense into them. I'm just like, get over yourself. Like literally, that was my advice. It was like a friend.
Yeah.
And like I'm more of a tough love kind of person. If it's someone that I don't know and like whatever, I'll be like, yes, tell me, you know. But if it's a friend, I'm just like,
Mhm.
actually what I told him was like, this is a you problem. This is not an anyone else problem. Like this is a you problem that you're creating in your head. But I was telling him, I was just like, yeah, you know, it's like you can't force things. And you can't force relationships, you can't force friendships, you can't force any of these things. And I was just talking about like, you know, my friendships and stuff. And I was just like, I had no idea I'd be like leading a podcast every day with a Chuta Gopi. Like, I don't,
Yeah.
I was like, what is even happening right now? And now we're like friends and this and etc. And it's like, I would not have been able to tell you that last year. Last year, I was like living in Ecuador with my partner. You know, it's like, I have no idea. So I think Krishna is really mysterious, and he's funny, and he's mischievous, and he puts people in the right place at the right time. And I also feel that way about you, Truth. And I'm so excited. We're going to India next week. It's going to be epic. Last night I was like in a good anxiety. Like I was still like hyped up from Kirtan, and I was in bed like, oh my God.
Yeah. Oh my God, it's happening.
And last thing I'll say is that I also really think that everyone who's been joining us for the lives since this podcast began, like you're all super special, and this is an amazing sangha, and this is just really sweet. And I was just like thinking when Kimberly was giving the takeaways, I was like, you know what, when people are out there listening to the podcast, because everyone, apparently there's like thousands of people out there listening to this podcast. We like check the analytics, and there's like people all over the world listening. And so I was just thinking, I was like, wow, like Kimberly's a mainstay. Like people hear Kimberly's beautiful, sweet voice all the time, and like they hear the names of the people we're referring to, and Martha and Pasha and Lane, and you know, Irenka is usually here, and Baldevi, Dana, everyone here. Rini is here today, and Rachna, and Bruce is a new addition.
Hey, I met Bruce yesterday.
Bruce is amazing. And yeah, all of you are so special, because like Krishna has brought you together for this live sangha for a reason. And so we are really appreciative to each and every one of you and all your comments. And it's so good. It's so good. I feel the shelter. I feel the shelter and the love. Yeah, Kimberly says, feeling the love today. Martha says, you're a blessing to us all. You're a blessing to us all, Martha. Thank you all so much for this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful way to start the day. We will be here. We'll take a little break over the weekend, and we'll be here Monday, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, getting more in depth to this verse about not being entitled to the fruits of our actions. Thank you all so much. Thank you to our live studio audience and Achyuta, and we will see you Monday. Bye, everyone.